Much for joining us here today. Glad everyone found it, or all of you found it at least. Hopefully this is a motivation for the following speakers in session 2 will find their way, so thank you for joining me. So when I spoke to Cameron about potentially doing a talk, he told me do not do AI and bring some personal experience. So this is basically exactly what I have here. I thought about it a little bit. I thought, I might actually go to the next slide. That's not working again. So, first of all, my name is Brenden, Heinitz, and I've got 16 years of experience. And it's that 16 years of experience I want to sort of share here. Obviously, there's a little bit you can learn, but I'm hopefully going to do it in a way that sticks in your brain. You can sort of think about it and incorporate it into your experience. A lot of what I will be talking about today, potentially for the more junior within us, might not have seen these examples or not know how to deal with them. But also, one of the things I want people to take away if they're a bit more senior is to actually support those people in your company. That's sort of one of the things behind it. So, just for me, 16 years of experience. I've done a lot of testing, but I've also done business analysis, project management, so quite a lot within the entire project scope, which I do also believe has given me a lot of insight that I'm also sort of bringing in here. Developed test strategies, KPIs, dashboards, done training, mentoring. I work for 294, it's a very small company here in Australia, part of a larger group throughout Germany, Poland, Mexico, not Mexico, South Africa, America. We've got a local partnership with Parasoft, we're out there today, so you can definitely go talk to them. We've also got a couple of international partnerships. So, before I actually talk about the experiences that I have, I wanted to take a step back and think about what is testing. So, taking it from ISTQB, software testing is a way to assess the quality of the software and to reduce the risks of software failure in operations. Yeah, so I think everyone has read that at the time, they might have forgot it, but it's also very similar to what Anne-Marie said. I was listening to her talk, and quite a lot I agree with, and I'm glad that was the opening talk that we had. But there's also a few differences between what she said and my experience. The question I have is, why do we test? And this is a quote from me, because I couldn't find anyone else, is to build confidence in the product's quality. Alright? It's not about finding the most defects, as she was saying before. We're not there to find defects. We're not there to say we've run these tests. We are there to build confidence in the product's quality. That is the goal that testing has. That is why testing is in all these organizations. Then we'll take to the next one. Alright, I'm going to stop using that, which is people instead. What's the role of the tester? So, just as testing builds confidence in the product's quality, it's my view that the testers themselves must cultivate confidence in the testing process itself. I've seen it a lot of times, there's one in particular that I can think of. Came to a project, started speaking to them. I came in to help the project, the product quality processes weren't so well looked upon. And first thing, I talked to the test manager, he says, I can't do anything. Project manager keeps micromanaging me. Everything I do, he micromanages me. Right, okay, listen, talk to him. Went to the project manager. I said, I have to project manage him because he doesn't give me anything. He doesn't tell me what he's doing. He's not doing everything right. So basically showing exactly that. There was no confidence in the processes he was implementing. There was no confidence that if something came up, he would alert them on time. There was no confidence that a solution would be found proactively. And that's why the micromanagement came. So I worked with him for like 3-4 months, constantly increasing processes of the project itself, but also the KPIs, the dashboard that he was presenting, and just the way he was communicating. And by the end of the project, he wasn't micromanaging anymore. And so it really came down from that fundamental that the project manager did not have the confidence, and that's why the test manager and all the testers within there, we need to make sure that we are giving confidence to the wider organization that testing process and the people that we have in there are good at what they do, the value that we bring, going back to what Anne-Marie said, that's what we need to be doing. So, testing involves people. Like I said, there's a lot of similarities between Anne-Marie's talk and mine. It is about the people that we have, the people that we talk to, all the different stakeholders, and processes. Once again, spoken about that multiple times. Planning, making accurate plans, keeping those plans, and the more that we keep the plans that we've set, the more confidence I have in our ability to do so, and they can trust us to continue. And then finally, communication, extremely important. And this is actually the symbol that United would use for their testing support, because that is the core of what we believe testing involves. There are other aspects, such as technology. Technology is there, but it's only there to support the processes. We don't start with the technology and build the processes based on it. We understand and build the processes that we want and select the technology to support us. Increasingly, the technology uses AI. It's coming out more and more. That's actually one of the reasons we joined with Partners as a technology provider. Even before 2000, so they've been doing it for years and years. They've used machine learning and everything into their tools that they provide to do that. So if anyone's interested in tools, go ahead and talk to them. Maybe have a talk to them first to make sure the processes are there. Reporting, also extremely important. That's part of communication. What are we doing? How do we communicate that? If we have consistent reporting, that's important. And then obviously documentation also falls under the communication side. It's just one of the ways in which we communicate. It's not verbal, it's the test results, the documentation that we have around it. So going into people, when we have different project stakeholders, we have your SMEs, we have your project managers, business analysts, developers, quality assurance, and the end users. There's probably a few more that go in there, or subgroups within them, but it is important to understand that we are one part of the entire. As you were saying before, and I think I've got a little bit later in the slides, we are information providers. We do not decide whether we go live. We provide information so that somebody else, project manager, can make that decision. And usually not only the project manager, but even those above him. I've got a story about that later. Going to one of the focuses of it is personal stakeholders. So this is sort of where I started. I redid this slide so many times. This is something I wanted to include in there. Was projects have stakeholders within them, but we also have stakeholders that influence us. When we're young, it's the family and friends that influence a lot of what we do, either for good or for bad, hopefully for good. But then as we move into the workforce, it's our colleagues quite often that give us the most growth, information, feedback for us. And there's a wealth of feedback out there if you're actually looking for it. I realise that also mentors is also a major one, but mentors for me are very, very often your direct supervisor. Any good direct supervisor will have your best interest in heart, and they will be providing feedback all the time. It's up to you how you take it. So you should really be listening. Everything they're saying, even if it's not, like I've had a lot of mentors, but none of them are formal. They were all there, there was lots of information to be gained from the good mentors, the good leaders and the bad leaders. So I've had both. I've learned what to do, what not to do, but even from those that I consider bad leaders, there was actually a lot of information from them that I've gained, that I've realised later that I have actually started to implement in my way of thinking and all that. So I'm saying really look out for where you can actually reflect and learn from the people around you. And obviously, industry leaders are coming to conferences like this and online personalities. There's so much on YouTube, on any learning platform. There's a wealth of information out there to learn. So if you're younger, especially if you're younger than even if you've been here for a while, continue to learn, find out as much as you can. So the next story that I have, there's a little bit of embellishment, a little bit not, but this is a story I think most people have encountered before in one form or another. So imagine this, you're nearing the end of a major project And as you're wrapping up to user acceptance testing, there's a high severity defect left over. And project mounting has to be done. The development team comes to you and says, how are we just downgraded from high to medium? No, we supposed to go live. It's not a problem whatsoever. Think about what you've done before. Doesn't make a difference if your project manager, project sponsor, are all coming to you with the same question. It's like, come on, got to go live. Just there's one defect in the way. How do you respond to that? There's a couple of things early in my career. I've noted luckily before this situation really occurred. There's a thing called severity of a defect and classifications of that. When I first started, this was just a tag that was already there. I never looked at it. I never thought anything about it. I didn't even define the defects based on the definitions that were there. It was just something that was there, I never understood. But there is an actual focus of it. And so, give me one second, my notes. The other part was your exit criteria. Once again, it was there. We just tested everything and sent it across and everything was fine early in my career. But these are there for a reason. Like the product quality, project defect severity is a predefined definition that you make early in a project when there's no stress, that everybody agrees on. Everyone has a chance to have a look at it, everyone agrees on it. And it's a way to clarify the impact that it has. There's a very, very real reason behind it, and you should really consider that an important part of your strategy as a plan. Same thing for exit criteria. This is while there's no pressure on the system, what level of quality are we going to accept before we go live? Yeah. So I had, like I said, this situation, tiny bit worse. It was too high severity defects out there. And in this situation, they came up to me, like the developers came up to me, let's just change it to medium, it'll be fine. And then the project came up to me, the project manager came up to me, and the project sponsor came up to me, they all asked me, and then they sent me an email, and that was a perfect situation for me to respond finally. And I broke it down, and this is somewhat where communication came. There were, I broke it down to 5 parts. First of all, I empathized. So as Brenden Heinitz, I understood the pressure they were under. They had just over a week to deliver. They didn't deliver it there because of business impacts. They had to postpone it to the next year. It was like a 5 months delay before the next slot they could deliver it in. So it's not something they could just postpone 2 weeks. So I understood that, and I made sure I communicated that that was understood. The second part, I clarified the issue. They didn't have an issue with the severity of the defect. They had an issue with not being able to go live. So I broke that apart. I said, here is the defect. This is the defect severity. For me, it matches perfectly. I'm not going to change it. The other issues, here is the exit criteria. The exit criteria says no high defects. I can't give my endorsement because it's not met. And then also, gave them the option. I gave them the option and said, look, taken from Marie, I'm an information giver. I don't decide whether we go live or not. I can give you advice as to whether we have met the exit criteria that we predefined earlier in the stage. It's up to you, project manager. If you would like to go live, that is your decision. Project sponsor, if you'd like to go live, that's your decision. Which is all true. We are one cog in the, of the stakeholders of the project. We provide information to the rest of the project so that they can make a decision. And that's very, very important to understand. We are not there, we are not responsible for the quality. We provide the information on the quality of the system so that someone else can make a decision. They can go live if they want. There's lots of reasons. I don't know to talk about why they go live with lower or higher quality. That's up to them. And so by doing that is we're utilising the processes that have been predefined from the earlier stage. And we are not, as testers, blocking to go live. We are, I want to use the right one, we are adhering to the established standards that we define in the system. So that's a way of thinking about it. And so, to finalise that, what actually happened in there? So, sent it across, didn't hear anything. No one decided to go live just for the sake of it. Project sponsor, the project manager said, I'm not doing that. Project sponsor said, I'm not doing that. But what ended up happening, the developer managed to correct both of them on time. So the pressure was placed in the right situation, we retested it, everything went through, we delivered the project on time. So it worked out for the best. It just put the pressure where it needed to be. And no one put that eye at testing at all. We did exactly what we were there to do.
Don't you have exit meetings where everyone actually has to sit it? It's interesting, exit meeting by email. Like, I don't have them like that, that you have to actually sit in a room.
No, in that project, I've got to say, most projects we didn't have it. I had talks with the project manager, and there were other stakeholders that sort of in that conversation, but it wasn't a formal exit meeting. It was, do you give your endorsement from a technical perspective? We said, no. Here are the reasons.
Yeah.
Like,
It's alright, it's just it was a bit of isolationism, like that. Isolating you.
Well, yes.
Coercion.
They were exactly that. It was exactly that. And if I didn't have all the previous experience beforehand, I might have succumbed to it. I might have just changed it because the developers have told me they would fix it afterwards. But then that responsibility would have fallen back on me. Whereas the responsibility was on the developers in the first place. They needed to open their eyes and show them. And so that's exactly the point, is we have those processes in place to protect us and to make sure that the information we're providing adheres to what was already predefined. Project manager, project sponsor, they have the ability to override it, they have the ability to change it. And there's been situations where similar things have happened, but that's a different story. All right. Give me 1 second. All right. The next set of stories that I have came, I learned this analogy from one of my mentors, one of my project managers, and it has stuck with me to this day. Obviously, I'm presenting it here. But it is a really good analogy. And so, imagine you're preparing a presentation for 3 different sets of stakeholders. One of them are your specialists, developers, testers, the SMEs, or whatever. The next one is for your project manager, or team lead, whatever it might be. And the third one is for C-level suites, the CEO, the CEO. But the way of thinking about it is, you're not preparing a presentation, you're preparing a meal for them. And so, the specialist wants the whole meal. They want the entree, they want the mains, they want the dessert. They want information. You want to give them everything they need. They're going to, if you don't give them what they ask for, they're going to ask questions, and you're going to have to go deep into the details. You want to know why the defect occurred, how did you fix it, will it occur again, how are you sure, have you done regression testing, what's the reason for this particular requirement, and. We're going to go into the details. And I was actually talking this once again about a week ago. I was talking to a friend of mine, just talking about this presentation I was going to give. And he gave me a term, I don't know if he came up with it on the spot, but I love the term, premature explanation. So, what happens when you're more junior? Because you're always in this sort of level, you're always thinking about the detail, you also want to give this detail all the time. But what happens when you start speaking to your project manager or your team lead? They don't want the detail. They don't want the main course. They want the entree and they want the dessert. They want to know what's going on, and they want to know how to fix it, and they want to know the status. That's it. They've got a lot of stakeholders that they need to talk to. They need to summarize all the information. And so the amount of information you give your project manager is going to be a lot less, a lot more meat than you're going to give to fellow specialists, fellow testers, fellow developers and all that. Taking that one step further, C-suite level, they just want the result. They don't care what happened, how it was fixed, if it was fixed. They want to know, am I on track? What do I need to do to put it back on track? That's it. And so that's the three sort of stages of serving the right meal to the right audience. The higher up you go, the more succinct you need to be. The lower you go, the more detail you need to present, or at least be willing to, or have it in the back pocket to be able to present. And that's what led me to another sort of analysis that I've encountered, is when a freshest creates a presentation, lots of pages, lots of information, all that. The higher up you go in who you're presenting to, the less pages that presentation has. And the other thing about it, this got me as a junior, those fewer pages took a lot less time to create. And I've seen that over and over again. As a junior, I did not understand it. Speaking with a lot of project managers and even speaking with COOs many of the time, I've realized the importance of it. And once again, the next analogy is when you're earlier in the stakeholder matrix, so you're a specialist, you're a painter. You're providing more and more detail with colours and the paint strokes that you're giving. And the way you give more detail is just to give more and more detail, more and more paint onto the canvas. But as you go into the higher levels, especially all the way up to the CEO level, you actually turn into a sculpture. I don't have an icon for sculpture, so I'll leave that up there. But you become a sculptor. And so every single move you do, you're taking information away. You've got a block of rock, and every action you do is taking information away. But it's taking the right information away. And you have to be very careful as well. Because if you take the wrong piece of information away, the nose comes off the sketch, or a real critical part of the sculpture disappears. And you can't just put that information back on. I mean, it's an analogy, there's situations, but if you miss an important piece of information, you can't get it back, and people don't know what it is. And so you need to have an image partially of what you want to show, why you want to show it, what you need to show, like how can they help you solve whatever problem you're having. And so you have to present in that way. And that is why sculpting takes a lot longer than painting. Yeah? And that's really the difference. The lower you are, you're a painter, nice and quick, all the information. Later, you're a sculptor, making sure that every move is very purposeful. Cool. I believe this was the last story that I had. Once again, sort of going into the reporting side of it. So, how do I start this one? Imagine you're working on a project. It has KPIs in place. These KPIs are great. Project manager loves them. You love them. All the information you want to give there is there. You're very confident in that. And then you end up walking, finishing that project. You go to a different project. Same project sponsor, same project manager, but all the KPIs are different. All the KPIs they have are also great and amazing. The dashboards are good and all that. But the dashboard, the KPIs that you were giving before, is not the same that you're giving now, or that project is giving now. And I had that situation. I walked into a program with 14 different companies, 14 different projects going on. And once again, I was consulting different projects, one after the other. And this is exactly what I found, is I get a one project, they were happy with it, the project manager didn't have any complaints or anything. I go to the next project, everything was completely different. Same stakeholders at the very top, they were getting different reports from every single project. There was basically no coherence between them. And this is a problem they didn't know they had. Like I said, everyone individually was happy with it. But it was an obvious problem for me going into there. I'm like, look, you've got great KPIs, but there's a communication problem going on. You've got a program, the program is supposed to work together. And like, sort of going back to my maturity point of view, this is a sign of poor maturity. Because test maturity is a classification of testing processes implemented within a company project, so in this case a program, and the adherence to those processes adherence to these processes throughout the company, department, project, and the adherence over time. And so while they each had individually testing processes, or in this case, KPIs reporting dashboards that they were using, they were not consistent throughout. And so one of the things I came in, it was a problem with the communication. So I've gone to all the different projects, the stakeholders, the project managers, the program sponsors, and I've understood, okay, why have you selected these KPIs? Have you considered what the other projects are doing that would be useful? And multiple sessions, multiple stakeholders within there. I didn't get all of them at once, but I've spoken to all the stakeholders within there. And we just sort of talked it out, came to an agreement, why we were using different things, and understood for that program what was the best set of KPIs that they want, without providing them too many, sorry, that was a German word coming out. Without providing them too many. Because I could have, the easiest thing to do, get every single KPI we got out there, chuck it on one huge dashboard, but once again, for the current sponsors, that's too much information. So we needed to find out what pieces of information would help them the most. And partially, I don't think it really happened, but the option was there in the individual projects. I had one or two if I needed it, but at least for the program side, there was one set of KPIs and dashboards that they were using. And so that was the communication side. Understood all that, and then, once again, that's when the technology came in. That's when we got in there and we started implementing it in a way to do it. And what actually happened is, through the communication, we actually found out none of those projects, like Andy already said, I'm too busy testing, I don't have time to create a proper dashboard. But what ended up happening is each project was doing all these dashboards manually. They were spending, like every day they were doing it, so they were spending 3 to 5 weeks depending on the project, getting all the information out, putting it into the dashboard, formatting it, and all that. And so by the end of this, 14 projects, let's say minimum 3 hours per project, we were saving a massive amount of time once we actually consolidated all of this. And that time saving, first of all, went straight back into testing, we improved the quality. The program managers had a lot more confidence in the process, going back to what I said before. With that confidence, they could understand it, they could compare the projects and actually understand which ones they need to focus on and assist, and which ones were actually fine. So obviously everyone's doing different KPIs and dashboards. There was not that comparison, and the time that the program management was spending with their resources that they could manage was not being allocated correctly. And so that's why these are the fundamentals. It comes back to using the technology to support the processes, I don't have the image here, but to support the project processes, making sure it's consistent, and providing confidence in the testing process itself. Oh, I'm going to finish. I might take some Q&A there. Yeah, so that's it. Any questions? Apparently we've still got 10 minutes. Happy to take a Q&A round if anyone's got any. Yeah.
Going back to what the lady said about the exit meeting.
Yeah.
In your experience, when something's left over, what's the likelihood that it gets finished? Which is, for me, pretty well none, never.
Yeah.
And also, what's your opinion on the bugs that you've identified that I classify as internal?
Okay.
What's the point of them? Do you think that they should be fixed rather than going out the door and a customer finding them?
So it comes back to what the project has agreed upon. This is hopefully why you have the exit criteria early in the discussions in the test plan. Say, this is how we know that we are willing to give it out. This is the quality that the project or the company is willing to accept. I've got a whole other presentation on that, but there are reasons that company will want to deliver straight away, and that's first of market type of situation. I don't want to wait 6 months because of 1 or 2 bugs. We're happy to take that reputation hit or whatever that impact is, but it really depends on the impact, which sort of comes back to the severity. How do you define the severity? It can be like reputation, it can be monetary. And so if they say, okay, it's going to cost us 50,000 in lost revenue if customers apply it, but by not implementing, it's going to cost us 500,000, they're going to go for it. So once again, we are providing the information for them, the impacts that this defect is likely to give, so that they can make a decision. Obviously, as a tester, I want everything fixed. I think everyone in here, we want everything fixed. We want the perfect quality software. But that is not our role. Our role is to provide information to the decision makers so that they can make an informed decision. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Yes?
So I understand that you base your metrics based on relativity. So I understand that your matrix of the priority and the severity is largely based on relativity, right? So you're able to do that assessment because there's a related ticket potentially that you classify as a minor bug.
Mm-hmm.
So now if you have a more severe bug, you have the relativity to compare so that you build that metric. But what happens if you don't have that baseline? What happens, like maybe the exit was ambiguously defined at the beginning of the cycle? What happens if you don't have a baseline because your team is young and you don't have enough data? What do you do in that case?
So this is where I'd say you need to work on the early stages. Like you need to build up your definition. And defect severity should not be relative. You should not have, here's one defect, here's another defect, this is worse, therefore this is higher. It should have a definition that's based upon. Like I said, there's multiple things you can do, but one of them is how widespread is it? Like if it is going to affect every part of the system, then it's towards a high. It's going to, if discovered in production, it's going to cause over $50,000 in damages, then it's medium. If it's over 100,000, then it's high. Like, try and get to the best of your ability sort of actual definitions of different defects. And one other thing, one other thing that I want to raise, I didn't put it in here, but thank you for reminding me. There is a huge difference between defect severity and defect priority. And I think way too often, I've seen it way too many times, everyone just calls everything priority, and we've lost the use of severity. I think they have two aspects, and they should be treated separately. Severity is the impact that this defect would have if taken live, and the priority is the impact within the project to continue testing or development or whatever it might be. And so the little symbol that I had, if I go back to it, it's a very basic symbol, but yeah. You got your priority and severity. And so obviously if you have a high severity and it impacts a lot of systems, these are the ones you want to do first. And then it's up to the project, but generally speaking, you want to go for a moderate defect with a high priority. So this is affecting a lot of different processes, or it's blocking some development, or whatever it might be, before you look at a high severity that isn't blocking as much. From the development, the project point of view. These high severity are worse defects, but from solving them, we might actually go to a moderate severity defect before we go to a high severity defect because of the impact on the project itself. And that's why I said there's two different dimensions, and I think we definitely need to continue to use two different dimensions because they're two different pieces of information. How does it affect production, and how does it affect my project? Or their project, or the project. Yeah? Yes?
I'm Steve, I work at Zen Quality Community. So on the priority severity,
Yep.
Absolutely correct, but it changes through the testing life cycle.
Yeah.
So at the start of testing, yeah, middle testing, yes, but when you're in, say, the last week, and you've got the scenario for two severity defects, priority is almost irrelevant. Because you're talking about impact of business on.
I do disagree.
That's okay. That's why we have this conversation.
Yep.
And we've got people who ask this question.
I disagree because imagine there is a very high severity that affects a single process in the software. But then you've got a moderate severity defect that affects the entirety of the project. That, even though it's moderate, it will affect a lot more people, and so it still might end up being the first defect to deliver. But to your point, if it says, I don't care how many moderates, but I do care how many highs, then yes, then you want to solve the highs first to reach the exit criteria. But it's tailoring, going from project management, so to speak, you need to tailor everything, and ideally, it should be predefined how you're going to approach it.
Oh, yeah, we have all these things predefined, but it's very strict severity and priorities and everything.
Yeah.
I probably should have said the severity probably become more important than priority because you don't have very much runway left as the last cycle.
Especially if you've got 1 week left.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Thank you.
Sorry, considering the time constraint. So, thank you, Brenden.